Welcome back to College Hill Farm. Well, I got a message the other day, and they asked me if homesteading was a political movement. And what are homesteaders' political leanings? Well, I try my best all the time to keep politics off the channel, okay? This should be a refuge for you from the 24-hour news cycle, which is basically all politics. Politics. And the best thing you could do for yourself is to turn the news off, okay? Watch about an hour of news a day, maybe, to keep yourself up to date on current events, but other than that, turn it off. It's the best thing you could do, because everything on there is partisan politics, over and over and over. No matter which news agency you listen to, there's no true news agency, okay? They all have an agenda, and they're all owned by 6 corporations. 6 corporations own all of our news agencies, all right? That is a failing of our government. But anyhow, so politicians and politics play a part in homesteading, but I don't think it was ever a political statement. All right? I just don't. I don't think it was ever a political statement. Homesteaders select this lifestyle because we reject consumerism. Okay? All homesteaders can agree on a couple things. First, our food system is broken. Alright? Our food system is broken. 2 or 3 corporations own all of the meat that we consume. 2 or 3 corporations, and they decide what our farmers can raise and what they'll pay for. Chicken, pork, beef, all of it. 4 corporations nationwide. So, one of the problems that homesteaders see is that America is corporate owned. Everything in America is corporate owned. From the seeds you buy to the food you put in your mouth comes from a corporation somewhere. Go away, mosquito. The mosquitoes are terrible this morning. I came out to work and it's been raining on and off so much that I can't get nothing done. We're in that it's shower, and then the sun will come out like it is right now. It just got done pouring, and now the sun's out. Anyway, everything we eat, everything we consume comes from a corporation. Now, some people are afraid of genetically modified food, and so they go back to the land. Some people are afraid of, and I say afraid, but they're concerned. I don't think homesteaders are really afraid of much of anything. I know I'm not afraid of much of anything. But they do have concerns about our food system, about the way they want to live and the way they want their children to live. Those are big concerns. A lot of homesteaders homeschool because of the school system's problems, and school systems have problems. Okay? If you think the school systems don't have problems, you're wrong. I was an educator for 30 years. I can tell you the school systems have problems, but they're still better than a dumb population. Okay? Than an uneducated population. It's still better. Could they do better? Maybe. Making them private ain't going to do no better. So, homesteaders are not a political movement, but in some instances, they have almost political motives. Let's talk about that. Okay, one of the things that homesteaders have always wanted to do And it's kind of a resurgence back during before the Great Depression in the 1800s, between the Civil War and the Great Depression. We had a pretty robust culture of DIY and self-sustainability and those kinds of things. And there's no real thing as self-sustainability. I would like to say that up front. It's self-sustainability is a myth perpetrated by folks who just, I don't know, I guess it's not perpetrated, but it's just a myth. Okay, it's an American myth. So we've always needed one another. But homesteaders have, a lot of them have lived in the city. They have lived other lifestyles, and they're not satisfied with that. They feel a need to get back to a more sustainable lifestyle, a little bit back to nature, back to the things that make sense. They want to embrace a DIY culture, a do-it-yourself kind of thing, and they want to grow their own food. They want to build their own buildings. They want to do all the things that our ancestors did when they went out onto the prairie and started homesteading. But it's a very, very, very hard lifestyle. There are very few homesteaders who can just jump out there and get that accomplished. It's a steep learning curve to grow your own food, whether it be animals or gardens. It's a steep learning curve. I was raised to this lifestyle, so I lived in a DIY culture. Dad built and made, and Pa and all the folks in my family were that way. We always had big gardens. We had animals. We had everything growing up, from hogs to sheep to goats to mules, you know. So I was raised around that culture. So for me, this is a natural culture. But for folks that came from the cities, it's just not natural. And they have to learn how to move into this. And then part of it is a drive to get away from the commercialization of things. I don't know how I want to say this, but I hate to go to Walmart. I go to Walmart from time to time when there's things that I can't acquire locally. I prefer to spend my money in the little local markets here. If you don't spend local, you don't have local. And that's another homesteader trait. They like to spend local so that they have local. But most homesteaders are on a strict budget. And we'll get to that in a minute. They like to have skills. They like to share knowledge. They like to show people, just like I'm doing here. I show people how to do things like how to build a tractor shed, how to build a greenhouse, how to build this, or how to plant a garden, how to grow potatoes. You see what I'm saying? They like to share that information with others. And a few homesteaders like to have a homestead community where they can get out and socialize with other people. They call them like-minded individuals. And they have these homesteader conferences where they go to. I've never been to one. I'm not a very social kind of person as far as going out and being around people I don't know. I'm not a real social person for that kind of thing. So there are those like me that are not social like that. But we love the lifestyle because we grow our own food. We are out at daylight and doing stuff, and yeah, that's a homesteader trait. And some really like the loneliness of it. Me, I don't know if I like the loneliness of it or if I just like the work of it. I like doing. I can't sit. If I sit all day, it makes my legs kill me. So I have to get out and be doing something. Doing. So that's what homesteaders strive for, self-sustainability, and do. So, but what about their environmental awareness. Now, when it comes to environmental awareness, some of homesteaders are like old hippies. Okay? I know that sounds bad. I consider myself kind of an old hippie. I'm very environmentally aware. I'm aware of the things that are going on in my neck of the woods. I'm aware of what I do with the chemicals. I try not to use chemicals on my property if I can. I'm not organic, okay? But I do try to not use insecticides with reckless abandon. Some homesteaders do. Some homesteaders, they don't pay any attention to that. They'll have a pit where they pour their oil on their property. You know, my dad had a pit where he poured oil on his property. That's not me. And if you've got a homestead property, there's probably a pit somewhere where oil's been poured for years. Okay? And you'll never know it. It's covered up with weeds and things, but yeah, there's probably one of those somewhere on your property, because the old farmers, they didn't know about that stuff. As a matter of fact, the corporations used to say dilution was the way to dispose of this stuff. Well, the old farmers just poured it in a pit and let the rain dilute it, and yeah, let it soak into the ground. That's what they did. Today's homesteader is a little more environmentally conscious. They compost, they do stuff like that, and some folks say, well, that's a lefty idea. Well, okay, you know, that might be a lefty idea. I don't think about it as a political idea. It's just good for the environment. Most homesteaders are environmentally conscious. I'm environmentally conscious about the wildlife on my homestead. I want them to live a good life. I don't want to tear their environment up. I want to leave them wide margins. I leave 20, 30-foot margins in my fence lines that I allow to grow up in trees and stuff. I've got all kinds of squirrels and groundhogs, and until they bother me, I don't bother them. I let them live their little squirrel and groundhog life. But when they dig around the foundation of my house, or they're eating my corn up, I dispatch them. I reduce the population to where that they can survive on the wild stuff here. That's the whole idea. And I don't mind to share some corn. I don't mind if they get 10 or 12 ears of my corn out of the 10 dozen or 20 dozen that I'm going to get. I don't care. All right, but when they want it all, that's when you got to do something about them. So homesteaders want to be good stewards of their land, and that's just one of those things. Now, we grow things in hugel cultures and raised beds, and we compost, we do other stuff. Now me, I do standard row crop, which is not back to Eden and all that stuff, because how old I am. My age precludes me from doing some of this labor intensive stuff that a lot of young homesteaders are into. Okay, I can't do that stuff. A lot of young homesteaders don't have a tractor. They don't have other things. They live a minimalist lifestyle. They live in a tiny house. And I'm going to explain why I think that is, but it's just something that they do. So that's not a political statement. That's just being to where you want to be able to raise your own food, and you want to raise it responsibly. Okay, the next part is about heritage skills. Homesteaders want to learn heritage skills, the skills of their grandparents, their great-grandparents. They want to learn about canning. They want to learn about how to preserve food, smoking, dehydrating. They want to learn about how to preserve food so that they can raise their own and preserve it in such a way that it doesn't require electricity. A lot of them want to have solar power systems, renewable energy systems, whether it's a water system or solar or wind power. They're into that kind of thing. And it doesn't matter if their politics are right or left. They're still into finding a self-sustainable lifestyle. And I have found there are as many homesteaders on the left as there is on the right. All right? But they all can agree on these things. That's the way it is. And the homestead movement had taken off probably back in the early 2000s, probably just after the Y2K scare. The homestead movement began. YouTube has really done a lot to push the homestead movement forward. But in 2019 and 2020, during the COVID pandemic, that sent a lot of what I'll call yuppies into the homestead movement. Now, a lot of those, now that it's 2024, are bailing out because homesteading's hard. It's hard. Homesteaders live in areas where there isn't a lot of employment. Okay? Rural areas are traditionally not employed. Okay? There are very few jobs to be had in rural areas. For me, teaching was a great job because all rural areas have that. So, yeah, that worked for me. My oldest son is a teacher, and he lives in a rural area. Does that make sense? All right? So, it is one of those things that homesteaders have looked at and said, okay, I want to learn heritage skills, but I'm going to have to live on a lower budget, because if you want to make money on your homestead, that's really, really, really hard. Especially if you live in a rural community. Let's say I live here in Garrett County, Kentucky. I think there are 15,000 people in this entire county. Okay? Our main town has 3,000 people, and I live just outside of a little village of 7 buildings, and probably 70 people, 60 people live in the village, and less than 100. And I probably couldn't sell eggs around here, couldn't give them away, because everybody around here's got chickens. Okay, everybody's got chickens. So I couldn't sell eggs, so raising chickens to sell eggs is not going to make me any money. There are laws and rules about raising animals and butchering them that I would have to comply with in order for me to sell that way. Now, I can raise animals and sell them to the local USDA butcher, and or sell half an animal. Like if I raised 2 pigs, I could sell one of them as a whole pig, just sell it as a whole pig for a set amount of dollars, and then they just go to the processor. I'll deliver it to the processor, and they can go pick it up. Okay, you can do that. But making enough money on a homestead to support yourself, yeah, that's another thing altogether. So most homesteaders have a job. I think the USDA said 96% of all small farms have off-farm income, meaning somebody in the family works outside the farm. So, yeah, that's a thing. So homesteaders want to get back to those heritage skills. It can save you a lot of money, but to get started, it costs a lot of money. Okay, you got to buy canners, you got to buy jars, you got to buy lids, you got to buy, okay, you got to buy this. Dehydrating, you can build a dehydrator on your own. Solar dehydrators are great. But if it's turns off rainy, your stuff can rot in your solar dehydrator. Crystal and I use 2 electric dehydrators. We also can, but we've cut down on the canning. We've got 4 freezers. Most homesteaders have freezers. I'm going to build, hopefully this year when I get done with the tractor shed, if I can get done with it in a year, because homestead's hard. I'm going to build a solar panel system out here to run my freezers and refrigerators. So if the power grid goes down for some reason, we've had lost power for a day or two here, and I've had to use a generator a month, or not a month or two, but a week. And I had to use a generator, but that's all. So it's not been a big deal. But I want to be more sustainable in my food preparation and the whole bit. And that's what homesteaders have in common. We want to learn those heritage skills that our forefathers knew to help them get through the winter. One of the big things that all homesteaders have in common is the economy and the economic shift in society. What we're seeing is that more and more people are migrating to the cities. Here in Kentucky, Kentucky is mainly rural. There are about 1.4 million people that live in rural counties in Kentucky, but that number is going down every day because people are having to move from the rural communities to the cities in order to find employment. And as the population grows, that creates something we called, when I was a college professor and a college administrator, we called it brain drain. The best and brightest kids, how many engineers can a small community support? How many chemists can a small community support? Okay? So what was happening is our best and brightest kids were getting an education and leaving. And that causes problems for communities. The community I lived in was called Harlan County. It's where I was born and raised. We lived in Detroit, Michigan for a little while because of this same problem, economy. My dad was working as a coal hauler. He hauled coal for a living. And in 1963, there was a downturn. And he was hauling coal, but he was getting such a little bit for the coal that he hauled, he couldn't feed us. So he took his GI Bill, which he was in the Army. He was a staff sergeant when he got out of the Army. And he took his GI Bill and went to vocational school, the local vocational school, and learned electricity, welding, and something else. I don't remember what the other thing was, but he took machine tool. He took machine tool, welding, and electricity. We would call it industrial maintenance today. And he left and went to Michigan, and we stayed up there for about 7 years. And then came back. Because us hillbillies, we traveled up and down the hillbilly highway all the time. But in my community, when I was a kid, there were about 40,000 kids, 40,000 people in Harlan County. Today, Harlan County is probably down to about 22,000. All right, almost 50% of the population has moved away, and it's because of employment. Coal rides, it goes up and down, but the real thing that's killing the community is mechanization. 5 men can do today what 55 used to do. Okay, so it's an 11 times fewer employments than there were back in the 60s and the 50s. So, yeah, mechanization has done that. Mechanization is going to continue to do that. And there are a lot of economic factors that drive people back to homesteading. When I was a kid, my dad worked by himself. He was the breadwinner in the family. He worked, and Mom stayed home and took care of the kids and took care of the gardens and the homestead and all that stuff. Mom did that. Dad came in. Dad worked out on the stuff on the weekends. He repaired stuff. He did stuff like that. And Mom canned and gardened, and us kids helped garden. And all right. So it is a lifestyle that, by growing a lot of our own food, Mom and Dad were able to have one parent at home at all times. Well, today, our economic situation is such that can't happen. Here's just one example. In 1985, I graduated from college in December of 1984. And I started teaching. And in 1985, I bought a mobile home. I'm just trailer trash, okay? It's okay. I don't mind that term. I bought a mobile home for $10,000. Had 2 bedrooms, and Crystal and I started our family there. $10,000. Well, $10,000, according to the inflation, if you tracked actual inflation now, that mobile home should cost $28,000. Well, I looked, it's $53,000. Greedflation is killing our young people. Okay? Greedflation is killing our young people. But so there's an economic part to folks moving into the homestead realm. A socio-economic part. Why are they buying tiny houses? Well, because a single-wide mobile home, which used to be the cheap housing, a single-wide mobile home is out of their price range. So they're buying $14,000 tiny houses or $14,000 sheds and turning them into houses and putting them on a little piece of property. You can still find property every now and then for $2,500 an acre. Around here, property's going, unless you buy 100 acres, it's going for $16,000 an acre. It's crazy. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. But, they say, well, what the market can bear. Well, yeah. Our young people are getting squeezed. It's us old boomers that are just killing them. But that's driving a lot of the young people moving in to this homestead culture. I was watching my favorite homesteading channel, Lumna Acres. They're my favorite. I love their little channel. They moved into homesteading because of the food, because of health, and for me, that's why I bought this property and moved and left the rat race, because of my health. So a lot of homesteaders move into homesteading for holistic reasons. They love the idea of eating food that they know hasn't been sprayed with something. It came straight out of the garden and it's nutrient dense. Okay? They love that aspect of things. For me, it was a stress reduction. As a college administrator responsible for an entire campus, the stress sometimes was bad for me. I have multiple sclerosis, so the stress caused me to have more attacks of my MS. By reducing that stress, I have very few attacks anymore. So, and as you get older, you have fewer attacks too, okay? That goes along with it, but I have had fewer attacks and fewer MRI lesions after I reduced stress and came to the homestead. Way fewer, like 1/15 as much. So, holistic reasons are why a lot of homesteaders are moving to the homestead. One of the things, though, that is hard for them is health insurance. Generally, one of the two of you have to stay working for the health insurance, because the truth is you can't afford to go bareback. Your kids can't afford for you to go bareback on health insurance. One medical event can cause you to go bankrupt. Okay, how many people in America have gone bankrupt from not having health insurance and they've got cancer, or they've got ulcerative colitis? One hospital stay with me, I think the hospital billed the insurance $126,000 because of my ulcerative colitis. The insurance paid them $10,000 because they'd negotiated the price. But you and I can't negotiate the price. So if you were a homesteader and you had to go in the hospital for 2 weeks, that $126,000 would be out of your pocket. Does that make sense? So, yeah, so somebody has to work. But we understand that our health system is broken. We could do better in this country if we would. We're the only country, the only modern country in the world that has this type of health system, and it's not the greatest in the world. I just tell you it's not. I know some of y'all are going to start our keyboard warriors are going at it. Hit it, baby. I love it. I love it when you disagree with me. Anyway, yeah. So a lot of homesteaders understand that both our health system and our food system is broken, and they want to get back to a place where they can do things holistically. They can eat well. They can kind of help their self with the things that herbs and things like that. Crystal and I use a lot of herbs and things. She's a registered nurse, so she's not going to do something that's going to counteract our medicine. You know, you got to pay attention to that kind of stuff. So, yeah. So homesteaders look for a more holistic lifestyle when it comes to food, sustainability, and medicine. Okay, finally, homesteading is a cultural phenomenon. It's a lifestyle change, it's a lifestyle phenomenon and a cultural phenomenon. It is a drive to get back to nature more and more and more. It's a way to live in harmony with your environment. It's a way to connect with community in a way that's been lost in the modern lifestyle. It's a way to look at life, health, and move toward a happier lifestyle. You know, so many people are unhappy. They get up every morning and they hate to go to work. At one point I got to where I was going to work and I would be driving into work. And I don't know if you've ever thought of this before, but I'd think, man, if I'd just wreck right here, drive into this ditch, I wouldn't have to go in today. I didn't want to hurt myself. I just didn't want to go to work. I hated it so bad at that point. I guess that's what you call burnout. A lot of people are just burned out. I was. And this homestead lifestyle has kind of reinvigorated me. It's a cultural phenomenon, and it's happening around sustainability and holistic lifestyle. That's a good thing. Is it political? I don't think so. I don't think it's political at all. I think it's personal. Politics, homesteaders have politics that run the gambit from far right to far left. It doesn't matter. I don't think it's that way at all. I don't think it's political in any shape, form, or fashion. Okay? Homesteading is just personal. It's personal. It's a way to get back to nature. God lives on my homestead, up at the barn. I don't know how many other homesteaders feel that way, but that's the way I feel. I can sit at the barn and feel like I'm one with the universe. Does that make sense? So, it's a lifestyle that you just can't imagine it until you live it. Okay? And it draws those that are remembrant of their childhood. A lot of folks on the right like to remember their childhood fondly. Folks on the left want to be a little more progressive at homesteading. You just don't know which is which, and you can't know which is which till you talk to them. I hear all the time, people will talk to me and think that I'm this way or that way because I don't show you on the channel. It's not your business. And really, I think the channel should be a total escape from the politics of the day. The politics of the day will kill you if you let it. Had a good friend of mine, let it kill him. Let it kill him dead as a hammer. You know, big heart attack over stupid stuff. Over some political candidate. Can you believe that? You know, who's going to do that? So, yes, homesteading is not a political phenomenon. It's a cultural one and a holistic one. So, if you like this stuff, this homesteading, do-it-yourself kind of thing, be certain to come on out to the channel and subscribe. We do this homesteading stuff every week, sometimes 1, sometimes 5 videos, Just depends on what's going on in the homestead that week. Now, if you hit the little bell, it'll be right up here when you come to the channel. It'll notify you when we upload a video. We upload on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and we do an occasional short on Saturday. So now, with that being said, it's time for me to get on to the next thing, and maybe I can get back to my tractor shed build, but the rain don't look like it's going to hold off much longer. Love y'all.